Ali, Mark, James, and also our friend Patrick, who is remotely joining us, unfortunately, started in the UK, which you all have together. I'm looking very much forward now to our panel. We discussed the digitalization of the wholesale industry, and we want to see what are the latest developments in the wholesale industry. We want to check out what is the connecting the world through digital infrastructure. Obviously, this is also on steroids. As our friend Frederick just mentioned about Africa, I think that applies for wholesale as well. The on-demand services around data, cloud, and connectivity. And we want to hear some answers from our panelists. What does the future hold for the wholesale industry in terms of data traffic increase? I would like to give everyone a chance to to respond to the questions. Hence, please, let's try to be crisp in our answers. And I will, with no further delay, ask my first question. How has the acceleration in digitalization due to COVID-19 pandemic shaped the wholesale and capacity industry? And I would like to hand over to, I would say, our friend who joined us unfairly from distance. You will be duly missed. Patrick, you want to shoot first?
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, I'm feeling incredibly jealous that I'm not there physically, but very happy to be joining this session virtually as well. So with regards to the question, Johannes, I think many industries, not just telecommunications, the COVID-19 and digitalization that's come through that has really brought through a number of changes in terms of the strategies and the approaches that we take as well. If we think of telecommunications, we've certainly seen the acceleration of the movement towards broadband and public internet. I've certainly experienced that with a lot of my customers over the past couple of years as well. We've seen expansion of capacity, which is getting closer towards the end customer as well. If we think of the enterprises that we ultimately serve, effectively the digital transformation has been really accelerated for them as well. Clearly they've had to be in a situation where their workforces have moved to a remote situation, but also the way I would suggest they have to engage with their end customers as well. And then if you think of those end customers, the experience that they've had has also been disrupted. Firstly, because of the distributed workforces that we've talked about, but also, again, because of the, unfortunately, ever-changing and evolving social distancing requirements they've had to contend with. So when I think of the wholesale and capacity industry, everyone on this panel, we all provide the products, we all provide the solutions effectively that's helped enable that mass digitalization of business processes as well as customer experiences as well. I think as Mark's just mentioned on his keynote, we provide the connectivity, that's been absolutely crucial in providing business continuity through this pandemic. Telecom operators of all shapes and sizes have had to pivot in terms of, probably from an approach which was more around modernizing the communications environment of our end customers to more enabling those remote workforces as well. And obviously we've had to do that at the same time that we've had to transition with our own workforce moving away from the office as well. From a Verizon perspective, we've invested a lot in terms of online portals to make sure that we can engage with customers in a digital fashion. We've talked beforehand on panels about making sure we had the requisite investment in our voice network. That was primarily to address the short-term uptick that we saw in the traffic there. And I think also a lot of the investments that we've made beforehand in digital transformation have really come to the fore here. So when we think of audio conferencing or video conferencing, our investment in BlueJeans capability, that's certainly put us in a good position. And I'd also say with regards to what we call our Verizon Partner Solutions Exchange, so our digital exchange, how we engage with partners from a quoting, from an ordering, and also supporting perspective as well. So all of these effectively, and these strategies, approaches, they've all been driven through this COVID-19 pandemic, if you will, and having to adopt digital transformation.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. Eric, before I hand over to you, I want everyone to know that Eric is joining us from beautiful Naples in Florida. Eric, do you want to answer this question as well?
Sure. The biggest, we're not an owner-operator. AP Telecom doesn't own and operate a network. We advise clients all around the world in ways to optimize their networks, however. But the biggest trend that we've seen globally, it may not be specific to the GCC region, is this breakdown of the traditional parameters that were referenced in the prior presentation that Mark gave and Frederick about your price, term, quantity, your IRU or a 1-year or 3-year lease. We're starting to see that really go to a variable sort of cost structure or a variable contract structure, whereas in the past it was very traditionally aligned with your traditional 1-year term, your 3-year term, or an IRU, 15 years, or cable life. And I think that's largely driven by the fact that most connectivity needs and digitization is seeing the ability to spike up and spike down depending on your need and your taste and preference for streaming or the apps that you are running off your respective platforms. That trend is going to increase. If you look at specific corridors and routes on a global basis, for example, the New York-London corridor, the Atlantic, the Nylon corridor, it really does not make sense anymore to have a sales team or humans sitting there selling a 10 gig circuit for $1,000 a month. That circuit and that particular corridor should in fact migrate to a screen. It should migrate to technology, just like you would trade any other sort of form of a commodity. So we're starting to see that trend take place that, if you can buy it on your credit card for a year service of $12,000, chances are your sales team shouldn't be focused on that. They should be looking at other higher margin and higher dollar transactions. So that's a takeaway that we've seen in terms of the last 18 to 20 months during this COVID period. And we think that this trend is going to continue for other corridors, whether it's Japan to LA, the Trans-Pacific route, maybe Singapore, Marseille, other long-haul routes from a subsea perspective. We anticipate that from AP Telecom's view to continue. Just the last point I would make is that there are excellent platforms being built out with enough of a carrier of last resort, a supply that's willing to sit and act as the de facto backbone of a exchange-based type of model. And we would see that trend continuing more as digitization takes place in the wholesale industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Ali, I was referring to you as well. You studied in the UK, as most of the panelists today as well. I have to say, Etisalat Group is in the region recognized the operator of the year since 2007 when it comes to wholesale. So compliments, and I'm looking forward to hear your thoughts around the impact.
Well, thanks. I think your question was that digitalization was faster than normal.
Because of COVID.
And how did it shape the wholesale?
Yes.
Well, I think you are right, and all of us they have seen that digitalization went quite fast. And I was really watching TV, in fact, was one of the top political responsible team in one of the countries. And he said that what we did in 2 years in digitalization, we didn't do in 30 years. And this is what I heard, on TV. So this shows, that definitely people sat back. And when you ask the question, how did it shape the wholesalers definitely, they were not at the forefront. Because if you see the consumers, they were impacted badly. People could not go to malls, could not do much of mobile activities went off. Okay, we had a lot of online and from home, more of data, more of video applications, video streaming, more of gaming and all that. But number of areas it was impacted. But when you look at it from the wholesale point of view, that was not the case. The wholesalers were exactly doing their business the way it was. Those who were unlucky, who did not have enough infrastructure, enough cables, enough capacities, because during that time, huge capacity were added. We're talking about, like in Etisalat, UAE, for example, alone, leave alone the group, 2.9 tera of capacity in 1 year. That is huge capacity. And if we did not have that, we would have failed the whole thing, the business, online education, medical, whatever you call it. I mean, all the new services that today is used online. And this is where then there was a question, or a big alert to everyone, how we could be ready for future. And I think, having said that, in terms of business, wholesalers did more in terms of data. Definitely did more those who do also messaging and all, because a lot of people had to use a lot of transactions from home. Then you get a lot of authentication messages and all that. So this is something, if those who know ATP messages, for example, the big chunk of revenue maybe went up as a result. So, and of course, as wholesalers, again, the issue of customer experience during that time, to not only reach to your own companies, like operators, but help others as well. So that's how also we did in terms of capacities and all. And definitely those quick digitalization helped a lot of pressure on us to meet those targets. So I think this is the practical case that we face.
Thank you very much, Ali. James, you are next. And before you answer the question, I would like to let the audience know that we have something in common. We like skiing both, which is very usual for someone from Austria. I'm from Salzburg, but a little bit less usual for someone from the UK. Over to you.
Thanks, Johannes. And yeah, I wish we had a bit more snow in the UK, but
Don't.
global warming isn't quite allowing that to happen at the moment. So yeah, I think from a CSG perspective, obviously we provide a lot of the BSS and OS systems that support our carrier and wholesale customers. And during the pandemic, I think one of the first things that was very noticeable was the speed and agility that's needed to change and adapt is faster than it ever has been. But one of the good things that I think really came out of it was both in the carrier community, but also in the supplier community from a software perspective, the partnerships and ecosystems, and the acceptance of the fact that we need to create those ecosystems to help drive through the innovation has really accelerated. And is it the COVID effect of us all coming together to try and solve that big problem? I think has really come through into how we work as a business, the way in which we're creating ecosystems with other software partners, but also collaborating with the carrier community in Catalyst events, creating that ecosystem where we can actually all come together. So that's one of the big changes that we've seen as a company and the way in which we're able to now put solutions together. But the other thing that's come out of it is the need to provide easy to use and easy to buy, easy to transact is much more prevalent than it was before. The need to turn up circuits, the need to add capacity because everyone's suddenly working from home, and the way in which the operator community needed to respond to that created some challenges, and it meant we had to go online, we had to create portals, we had to create platforms where we could buy and trade and move things around much quicker. Gone are the days where we can place an order and have that order fulfilled in 3 months' time. Well, the world is changing so quickly at the moment that we can't afford to do that now. So the way in which we stitch together the ecosystem of the platforms that provide the portals to order, to provision, to manage, to transact is much greater than it has been. And lastly, the way in which we monetize all of that. What I've been hearing today is new products and services, partnerships being created. That's adding a lot of complexity. That's really great to see. But the monetization of that also becomes much more complex because it's no longer just voice and data. There's all the layers of service that go in there as well. So it's been a really interesting time. I think it's created a huge amounts of innovation, and I think it has really accelerated us as an industry of carriers and suppliers to that industry, and driving forward in a much faster way.
Thank you very much. Mark, do you want to give us a very brief response from your perspective as well? Do you want me to repeat the question?
I lost track of the question.
No worries. How has the acceleration in digitalization due to COVID-19 pandemic shaped the wholesale and capacity industry?
I think that Patrick gave a very spot-on answer, and we've seen a lot of each one of the speakers gave their perspective where things are going. I think that COVID ultimately highlighted how critical it is ultimately to facilitate connectivity to anyone, anywhere. And I've traveled a lot actually in the last year, more than I had expected. And what I see is a common global problem, which is called COVID-19, being dealt with initially at the very start uniformly and now completely asymmetrically. You go from one jurisdiction to another, everyone's got a different view. And I go to Hong Kong, I had to sit for 2 weeks locked up in a hotel room before I could go into the general population. That's complicated. I went to the States to visit my mother, and you just get off the plane and say, "Hey, Mom, how are you doing?" And so it's very, very different perspective on where things are going, and that means that ultimately the world is going to be functioning continuously as this pandemic continues in a bit of an asymmetric fashion. And yet what has been common is a demand for communications tools, and that can be physical infrastructure for connectivity, but I think more importantly, an increased amount of applications. And interestingly, despite the fact that I'd like to toot our own horn as telcos or network providers, frankly, I think applications are becoming the focal point of what enterprises and individual users want. Not even the clouds are important. The applications that sit on top of cloud-native environments, that's what matters. And Eric highlighted the payment issues, and I alluded to it in my presentation, that the moment you have end-to-end platform capability that automates settlement through a complex food chain of ecosystem providers, not one individual environment. In other words, if I'm able to engage with you at Vodafone, as I do, in terms of determining what inventory you have using perhaps distributed ledger, tokenize that value and offer it congruently to somebody else. If I'm able to get to a license with a CRM, for example, and allow them to do that. If I'm able to have IBM resold through our platform by spinning up a virtual machine straight through our payment platform on the automated environment, this is what I think the wholesale industry is going to be going through, and understanding that the ICT ecosystem and what the user wants is ever more complex, that the specificity that we had delivered in, oh, I'm just going to sell you the network, oh, I'm just going to sell you the virtual machine, oh, I'm just going to sell you the application, that won't fly for much longer. And so therefore we need to really work more closely together, leveraging environments such as where Vodafone and PCCIV Global collaborate both in C-band and in MEF and in other environments like that, in order to assure that we're creating good frameworks in order to facilitate that. So I think COVID-19 has highlighted the necessity, as the colleague from CSG was saying, to really work more closely together in order to facilitate automation. At the same time, it's also given us a bit of a navigational roadmap about how we need to intensify an understanding of the complexity and intensify and accelerate the work that we do to automate that complexity.
Thank you very much, Mark. I would now go first with James for the second question. In the advent of cloud-enabled services and changing consumer demands, how can telcos effectively digitalize their services to succeed in a digital transformed world? On steroids.
Yeah, I think clearly cloud, whether it's public cloud or private, is here and has really helped during the pandemic. And one of the things it enables us to do for our customers is turn up services very quickly, especially when we see shifts in demand, even with specific events, where we have some of our customers had one of our customers had a big race in Jeddah over this weekend, and we support the monetization of the F1 platform. And there they have millions of subscribers all accessing, but just for a very short period of time, and then nothing until Abu Dhabi coming up. So where we have those kind of environments where we see lots of peaks and troughs in demand, that the cloud environments give us, a new film is launched, and there's a mass demand very quickly, but then it peters off again. The cloud has really enabled us to spin up environments very quickly, but also scale up and down when we need. And that also brings some economies of scale, so we can take advantage of when those services aren't needed. We don't need to be charging for them for the full time. So it enables the cost of entry to market of trying new services to be much lower as well, because we can actually work with our customers to trial new services. If they don't work particularly well, we're not committed to 5 years of hardware that's going to cost a lot of money. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in how we work. It also, I think, drives a lot of the ecosystem around APIs and integration with each other. As more goes up into the cloud, there's more interest from the ecosystem to want to connect to each other. In the previous generation where we were all in our own data centers, we were very locked away, and we didn't create an environment that was natural to interconnect with lots of things. But once we're actually up in the cloud, one of the benefits of the cloud is the interoperability. So it's really helped us as a software vendor enhance our solutions and bring that time to market and cost efficiency.
Thank you very much, James. Al, it would be great to hear your view as well.
Okay, I think cloud, this morning a gentleman from Huawei, I agree with him, because I think mentioning that maybe telcos have to change their thinking and thinking of the equation where you have network, cloud plus the AI to make it moving more from the core in that area. But I think much of operators have gone into cloudification long back. I mean, in Salat, for example, 4 or 5 years ago, we started with Salat Digital Unit, and that focus was very much on cloud computing, big data, all types of mobile applications, services, working with sort of enterprises in terms of smart solutions, their needs. And that's important that you work actually with the customer and work from bottom up so that exactly what's needed. That unit was duplicated again. We have it in Saudi Arabia as well. So I think this transformation we started maybe quite a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. This is in terms of the telco in general, but when it comes to wholesale, for example, and I think for the wholesaler again, maybe one important element is this edge computing has become quite clear, because you need things or services to the edge where you have you're reducing your latencies. Nowadays, in terms of connectivity, you have to have better latency. And at the same time, I think transformation to digital is the way you interact with your customer. So customer needs everything the way that he's experiencing somewhere else. He wants to experience it maybe the way he does his transactions with Amazon. Buy anything you want, anytime, from anywhere. I think that's extreme maybe for the wholesalers, but the ultimate is like that. So then at least you should have, as Mark was saying, that if you want capacity, you have to make it at least on demand. How can you make that? I mean, if I want 10 giga for 1 month, why should I have it for 1 year? All this could not happen without automation. And that follows with billing to be online, with customer experience, all these interactions. I think we are a little bit behind maybe, and we have to work harder and harder. This is our goal in Salat. We are trying to reach, we have made some things by the end of this year. We are almost there. And I think without it, definitely, and this pandemic also proved that you need more and more of this.
Thank you very much, Ali. Eric, would you like to answer as well?
Yeah, so from a digital infrastructure perspective, the networks in the last 18 to 22 months have, for the most part, done their job. There's been some bending, but networks have not broken. From AP Telecom's point of view, we see a lot of telcos around the world, whether in Spain with Telefonica, setting up their off-balance sheet InfraCo with Telexius. Telstra in Australia has set up a off-balance sheet InfraCo. They're in the process of doing that. We're starting to see a bifurcation of the owner-operator model. The traditional telco will not own and operate infrastructure on their balance sheet the way that they once did. And this is largely driven by the fact that the returns on the infrastructure are not going to be there to support the sort of ROI that folks traditionally have seen because of commoditization. So there's nothing wrong with that, but there is a need to look at history. So 20 years ago, we had 99, 2000, Y2K, dot-com bubble crash. A lot of that infrastructure is becoming very old, becoming antiquated as we approach the 20-year shelf life of a lot of the cable usefulness in terms of their ability to transform in the water, to support coherent technology and what have you. So we believe that the digitization for wholesale will see a lot of InfraCos that are set up that either are part of a telco. So a telco may own a percentage of that InfraCo off balance sheet to achieve the objectives of having the infrastructure available when needed, but not necessarily actually carry it on their balance sheet. And they become more focused on value added and high-end margin services.
Thank you very much, Eric. Mark, as the traffic increases, so will be the need for more fiber deployments, data centers, etc. How can the wholesale industry ensure a more sustainable and greener operations, which for you, having both sides, is
cleaner,
quite important already?
Well, cleaner, you're talking about green, or you're talking about, is that your intent? Well, first of all, let me address Eric's message, which I think is, as a lead into that, was really quite sound, because his message about bifurcation, I would simply say that the capital markets are driving increased layering of focus, right? They're saying, okay, here are the subcomponents of the ICT industry. Let's pull out towers, let's pull out fibers, let's pull out subsea, let's put each one of them in a separate asset class, which is then managed in a specific framework, and allocate capital with whatever they believe is the appropriate valuation associated with that return on capital, and that's meaningful. And that's why, now to your question about data centers, for example, is sitting in a separate asset class, completely separate today from fibers, and you're seeing dramatic valuations associated with data centers that can be as much as last report I saw from Citi, which correlated to a report that I also saw from Credit Suisse, that can range between 21 to 32 times EBITDA. I mean, the valuations are quite significant. And yet subsea fibers, which is the piece that connects to that as a separate asset, you'll maybe get 6 to 8 times EBITDA if you're lucky. We've seen a couple of transactions take place at double digits, but those are few and far between. And yet technology, which is supposed to automate those pieces together, also completely different multiples. So how are you supposed to put all of those together in order to be, you use the word efficient? From an operational point of view, the first thing you need to do is to have value coalesce together for a seamless experience for the user. And at the moment, that doesn't exist. And in fact, the capital markets are driving a disparity associated with that at the moment, which can likely only be solved by James APIs, as he referenced before, and other types of not just technical-based APIs, but commercial-based collaborations. What's interesting is that the more the capital markets get involved in the different asset class investments, they're going to be driving in certain criteria associated with their investor base. And increasingly, we're seeing that aligned with green agendas, or other types of structures that are borderline ideological sometimes in terms of investment criteria. And I think that we'll see a move associated with that. Also, we're seeing some sort of global coalescence that took place, for instance, at the COP26 in Glasgow, which I think is going to be driving a global purview associated with carbon footprints and so on. Fiber, from my point of view today, with the exception of trying to green up the marine component of laying the systems itself and making sure that whatever happens from shore to 12 nautical miles is clean, I think that there's a little bit of work that still needs to be done there, but the industry evolves on its own relatively well, and certainly it will over the next decade, exactly aligned with Eric's timelines associated with new cables and also new ships that will be necessary. And data centers, I think, because of the investor base, is being driven to a new thought process around efficiencies. First around PUE, in other words, power utilization efficiencies, which I think are becoming increasingly effective, but also various green technologies. So I think we're headed in the right direction. Whether or not we'll be able to align with various government demands in different jurisdictions remains to be seen. And we have a lot of work ahead of us in the industry.
Thank you very much, Mark. Ali, may I hand over to you as well, because the United Arab Emirates have a very, very stringent agenda when it comes to sustainability. And I'm pretty sure that Etisalat is driving this as well.
Yeah, I think maybe you could see this in terms of sustainability development goals. Definitely, if you could, we have it in our 2020 report, which we are on more than 20 items, including different, better environment, better living, many of these things. And I think when it comes to green usage and green power, at least in terms of power and all, we definitely aligned. And today, maybe United Nations, they have this goals in terms of sustainable development growth. Their goal is that together with GSMA, their plan, that mobile industry, say for example, by end of 2050, quite far, to be CO2 zero emission plan, that plan. And we are aligned, at least as part of our plan, to get that. Together that, today we are using much of what we call renewable energy for base stations, much of these base stations, especially in 5G and all, you have a lot of base stations, and not anymore using diesel and all that, you know what I mean? So I think, and this element is on the top with the group CEO of Etisalat to push the way. I mean, normally all such things are costly, but at least we are committed to go as per the plan, and future that at least this is in line with the country's goal as well.
Thank you very much, Ali. James.
Yeah, I think from our perspective in the I guess in the software industry as a supplier, we can certainly take advantage of things like the cloud and data centers that are environmentally friendly. But the other interesting thing about this, and we talked at the beginning of the panel around how everyone went and did remote working and the demand shifted. When we talk about the green agenda, we have to look at it, I think, a bit more holistically than just the data center itself or the connectivity, and expand it to how we operate as a company and as a society. We did a little bit of internal work on this, and interesting data point that the carbon emissions from my team traveling in 2019 were more than our data center. So yes, we can focus on reducing the carbon footprint of data centers, but also by being more efficient about how we work as a business, doing more Teams calls, and the pandemic has definitely helped with that. We've reduced our carbon footprint in other areas of our business. So from our perspective, we look at it holistically. There's the direct, but there's also the indirect. We had 5,000 developers that all used to be traveling into our development center in Bangalore. Now many of those are working remote and not actually traveling in every day. So there's a great reduction there. So it's more how we run our holistic business that we need to be looking at. The data centers are one part, but there's other elements as well.
Thank you very much. Eric, 2 minutes on this, because I'm keen that we have enough time for the last question.
I don't think I have anything further else to add that I already mentioned, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I give you your, yield your
No,
90
it's
seconds
actually
back
not for
to
me,
you,
it's
sir.
actually for you guys.
Don't forget Patrick.
Patrick is answering the next question, the fourth one, as first. How can the wholesale industry collaborate with stakeholders to build a strategy based on investments and innovations?
Thank you, Hannes, and hopefully you can hear me now. So I guess one of the things I just mentioned here is, collaboration has been a key part of this industry for many, many years now, as far as certainly as long as I can remember. And I think that's going to be key going forward as well. Mark mentioned a very good point earlier on about applications effectively now becoming the focal point, and I would totally agree with that. I would say products and services that are built on top of the network. Obviously, that's enabled by our connectivity in the first place. This is where I would say there's significant growth opportunities, certainly where we can and certainly where we do collaborate with our partners as well. When I think of this area, what we would call above the network solutions, the likes of security, video conferencing, audio conferencing, such as this, and clearly such as Blue Jeans as well. Mobile edge compute, IoT, private on-site 5G, LTE networks, if you will, but probably also network as a service as well, and collaborating and partnership there. So when we anticipate the growth in areas such as Ethernet, Wave, and Internet, making sure we're there to partner and support that, and clearly also from a fixed wireless access perspective as well. And whether that's through products such as 5G and 4G or LTE business internet. So I think the key thing here in terms of collaboration is how we as an industry, and certainly as telco operators, if you like, can effectively move up that stack. Now, when I think from a Verizon or from a Verizon Partners Solutions perspective, we've certainly been investing in our data centers, making sure that we're increasing the bandwidth capability just to address a number of those increased requirements that we've been talking about here, making sure we can support the speed of data transmission, the agility of services, the ability for customers to turn on and off as and when they choose to. I think the other thing to note here as well is, when we think of our 5G network in the US, we've invested significant dollars there, and I forget how many now. I think it's over 50 billion dollars in terms of our C-band spectrum, which we've acquired recently, and that really now gives us holistic nationwide coverage across all of the US to support our partners. So when we think about collaborating, to me, this is how we can leverage each other's investments to support our end customers. And obviously, we can now leverage that wireless capability to support our customers as their end customers are working more remotely and not in office locations, for example. I think another thing to note as well is how we leverage each other's capability in the different products and solutions that we bring to the market as well. So when we think of a number of the questions that we've posed today and a number of the end consumers working remotely, a number of the cloud applications increasing, the overall relevance and importance of security to me is absolutely paramount. So we work with a number of partners. That data and that traffic may be transversing multiple different networks. What we try to do within Verizon is we provide a security solution called DDoS Shield, which is effectively network agnostic, but it detects and it mitigates against these DDoS attacks, which can clearly happen, and which there's clearly the risk of that happening out there as well. So making sure that we're collaborating, making sure we're partnering, making sure we're leveraging each other's capabilities and strengths, I think is incredibly important.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Mark, I think part of the question you already answered, but the question here is how the wholesale industry might be able actually to drive and this agenda a little bit, because you laid already down the gaps and the different stakeholder and investment strategies, but how can...
Well, let me just offer, let's just recategorize the word wholesale for just a moment. Wholesale is effectively somebody else acting as a channel to leverage your capital, or that we are somehow leveraging some third party's capital. And so in order to try and create that collaboration from inside our organization, and we function we function less hierarchically today. We use instead something called scaled agile framework, which is a very structured way to be unstructured. And we've created around that an agile release train called third-party capital. And that third-party capital environment is supposed to effectively drive technology-based solutions and behavior from inside our organization to work with third parties and to figure out what are the APIs technically, what is going to be the commercial settlement, what do we want to do from a distributed ledger point of view in order to seek inventory on Vodafone's network or with APT's environment. And additionally, we're very focused on training and assuring that our own colleagues are trained on third-party capital environments so that they understand. And I think that collaboration has to start really from inside your own house to make sure that everyone's clear that it's not just about distributing your own capital. It's about leveraging the capital that you have with a third party's capital and to make sure that people feel comfortable with that and that they understand that we're not always competing, but rather the collaboration itself will drive greater value to shareholders and to users. And that's where we're at pretty much. And so hopefully that answered the question operationally as opposed to from the investment perspective. Very much aligned with what Patrick was saying.
Thanks, Mark. Eric.
Overall, wholesale can be a profitable business unit within a telco. SG&As, though, have to be in the single digits, 7, 8, 9%. You can't go back to the high teens like back in the good old days or back prior to deregulation. The key enabler is technology. Technology can drive automation, it can drive scale, it can drive efficiencies, and it can improve your profitability. So it is possible that wholesale is profitable and it's not the dog of the dog, and it doesn't have a negative connotation, wholesale. It can be a very good space, and there can be a renaissance with wholesale once again if we all embrace technology.
Right. Thanks. Ali?
Well, I think this is a tough question for the wholesalers in general. Because this tells exactly what's your issue, how you do it better. And I think there's a couple of things. Where do you come from? You are an independent company like Mark, for example, PCW, or you're part of an organization. In this business, I think time has told us that you have to be quick and fast. There could be many things that, at the end of the day, you said collaboration or getting sort of innovation from within. How do we get it? This could be a good talent, an expert, which either you have it in your team and not many of you, or you have to look for it and you may not get it. So the devil is in the detail in this area, because you need to change the way that you do business. You have to do it differently, without naming it, without spelling it out. We all know maybe. And maybe Mark mentioned about those trainings within, those collaboration within, so that how we can do business in a different way. But that's what's unfortunately not happening. So neither the marketing is helping you, and sometimes also agility within may not be also helping you. So I think it is something we have to overcome it. We have to do it if you really want to be a sort of a modern or wholesaler, or you do the business in a different way.
Thank you very much, Ali. I liked the phrase that you used, a structured way to be unstructured. Are there any questions in the audience? No? Nothing? Then thank you very much. Patrick, I hope that's the last year where you have to join remotely and that we see you here next year in person again.
Absolutely, look forward to it. And I was surprised to hear James saying he was looking forward to more snow in the UK as well, but I'll leave that to him.
I think he might have not driven on snow in the UK, and I don't wish anyone tries. Thanks a lot. Thanks to everybody, and have a great day over there.